وجاعل النور من الظلم فمخرج الصبر من الألم وملقي التوبة على الندم فنشكره على المصائب كما نشكره على النعم ونصلي على رسوله الأكرم ذي الشرف الأشم والنور الأتم والكتاب المحكم وكمال النبيين والخاتم سيد ولد آدم الذي بشر به عيسى بن مريم ودعا لبعثته إبراهيم عليه السلام حين كان يرفع قواعد بيت الله المحرم فصلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى أتباعه خير الأمم الذين بارك الله بهم كافة الناس العرب منهم والعجم فالحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا والحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا والحمد لله الذي نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله أرسله الله تعالى بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا فصلى الله عليه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا تسعر خدك للناس ولا تمشي في الأرض مرحا إن الله لا يحب كل مختال فخور رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله اللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر آمين يا رب العالمين. I'm going to continue speaking with you about ayah number 18 of Surah Laqman today. And in this surah, or in this ayah, there was the last portion, that phrase that Allah mentions about the advice given by Luqman to his son that I didn't yet cover. Last time we talked about وَلَا تَمْشِي فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا, not going around in the land or going around in the outside world aimlessly and reacting to situations and not holding on to your values. I explained the meanings of the word marah when we were doing that exercise. Today, I'm going to talk to you about this phrase that doesn't just occur here, it occurs elsewhere too. So I think it's the first thing to note is the importance of that. Here he says, وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ. Allah does not love any of the people who are two things. The Arabic words are mukhtal and fakhur. So we're going to dig into those words. But it's really interesting that those words have been said by Allah Himself in other places. Why is that important? Because here Allah is quoting a human being. Allah is saying that He granted Luqman wisdom and He said that. And in other places it's Allah Himself saying that. So there's a difference between when Allah speaks and when a human being is being cited by the Quran, endorsed. And you would think first somebody learns the words from Allah Azza wa Jal, and then they reiterate them. But you've got the reverse here. Allah inspired this person to share these words, and then later on Allah Himself is endorsing those words as officially His also. So it's not just wisdom He gave to this one man and his son to be imparted to his son, but it's actually something that's universal. So it's a pretty powerful thing when these are called the fawasil in the Quran, meaning ends of ayat that are often coined and they get repeated. Many of you are familiar with Wallahu Ghafurur Rahim, for example. Right? They're called fawasil. That's the fasila of the ayah, the far end of the ayah. Right? So some of these fawasil in the Quran are a way of the Quran teaching us its most standard teachings. Think of these fawasil like the pillars of a building. Right? So you've got walls, you've got windows, you've got all kinds of elements in construction, but every few meters or every few feet, you've got to run into a structural column or a pillar of some kind, or a structural beam, even going horizontally across. These endings, these statements in the Quran, like لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, or وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Those statements aren't just conclusions to ayat. The fact that they're repeated so much are actually, you can think of them as those are the foundational teachings. Those are the structural columns of this building of the Quran. And that's why they get repeated so much. They're holding all the other teachings together. Right? So that's a really good way to think about these fawasil. And when some of them are more repeated, others are less repeated. Right? So this is one of the lesser repeated ones, but nonetheless, when something does get repeated, we know that it's something that deserves extra attention. Allah didn't just say it once, He repeated it multiple times. Now, let's think about these two words a little bit. The first of these words is mukhtal. And it's, if you look at the etymology, the root of this word, khayl, is a very common word in Arabic for a beautiful horse. So horses, because they were the obsession of ancient Arabs, had many words. So when the Arabs are obsessed with something, they have lots of words for them. I'm not very familiar with modern speak anymore, especially among teenagers. The vocabulary changes dramatically. But a car, for example, a nice car can have multiple names. It's not just a ride or a vehicle. It could be a whip, or it could be a whatever else, right? So there could be, someone who's really in tune with the streets can tell you 20 words for a car, right? And they know each one. And this is actually a natural thing. So the Arabs are not some geeky people that have exhaustive vocabulary that's complicated. They're people that experience life. They live outside. They're not people of the library and the university. They live in the desert. But for things that they appreciated, they had lots of words for them. And one of those words, obviously the Ferrari of the time, lots of horsepower, is a single horsepower. It's a horse, right? And so an Arabian horse at that, So those horses, they had lots of different words illustrating different qualities of them. And this word is really interesting for the horse, al-khayl. Quran uses it for the horse too, and horses as a category. Because these letters, khayl, also give us the Arabic word khayal. And khayal, which came into other languages after too, is actually the word for imagination, is the word for thought. So takhayyal, even in modern Arabic today, takhayyal is imagine. Just imagine something, right? So the idea that this horse is as beautiful as you could imagine, or it captures the imagination of someone, or when you look at something and it takes you into a different world, right? Like if you're driving and you pass by just this gorgeous house, and for a few seconds you start imagining what it would be like to live in it, right? Or if you make the mistake of taking your kids ever to a toy store, and because every aisle they're going through, their life is changing, because their eyes only fall on the expensive toys, right? They're not looking at the 99 cent. They're not looking at that. They're looking at the big boxes that are, and these stores are really smart too. They put the most expensive toys at the bottom, most accessible, and they put the really cheap stuff way on the top where kids can't see it. So at the kids' height, there's all the $200 Lego sets. And the kids looking at it and imagining their life transformed as they build this police station at home or something, So the idea that when you see something and it captures your imagination is actually embedded inside the word khayl. It's the desire of everyone. They're fantasizing about riding that kind of horse, right? They're daydreaming about it. So it's the dream, call it dream car, right? So it's their dream ride. Now, this word then also started getting used in the iqtirab or iftial family for ikhtiyal when someone has a very imaginative view of themselves. Have you ever heard the expression, get off your high horse? It's actually that in a very real sense. When someone starts imagining themselves to be someone they're actually not. When someone has a false perception of themselves. It's as if they're not seeing their real self, they're seeing their imagined self. That's a crazy thing. When you look in the mirror, you see yourself. But actually, a phenomenon in the world is, sometimes there's your real self, and there's the self that you want everybody else to see. There's a self that you want everybody else to be impressed with, right? Or the way you speak when you're on your own, the way you feel. You could be someone very scared and vulnerable, and you could be someone very shy and, someone not very sure of themselves, not very confident. But when you're among your friends, you're outspoken and you're loud and you're aggressive and you're just a completely different person. You just become a different person. You might have friends like that. When they're with you, they're totally normal. And then when you see them with their other friends, they become a different creature. They transform themselves completely because they allow others, the impression they want to give to others, to start shaping them. And when you do that enough times, when you let other people define how you should dress, how you should talk, how you should behave, then you start imagining a version of yourself that they will like. that will be cooler, right? And when you do that pretend enough times, then the real you starts getting suffocated, and all you see is the pretend you. And the difference between the real you and the pretend you is a pretty big difference. And what's the biggest difference? The biggest difference between these two is that the real you actually cares about what's right and wrong. That's the ruh Allah put inside you. The real you actually is concerned about what is beneficial and what is harmful, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Not just even in the religious sense, in life. The real you is a sensible, thoughtful, emotionally sensitive human being. A caring human being. But this fake self, this imagined self, this mukhtal self, this version of you, the only concern it has is, what are people going to think? How will this be perceived? So all the actions are, so much of their actions are, or that person's actions that lives inside you, the mukhtal, are based on what impression am I going to give if I dress like this, if I talk like this, if I hang out with this person. Oh, sorry, I can't be seen next to you because it looks bad. Or I can't say that because that looks bad. Or I can't dress like that because I'm not sure if that's okay. And that can become so powerful that you can have, for example, there was a time, for example, even in Western societies, where modesty for women's clothing was actually the norm, right? And there were actually, citations, and even in churches, people looked down upon if they were dressed and too exposed and things like that. That's not Muslim society, that's Christian, even Jewish societies, right? And then with the advent of postmodernism, and as the world transforms, now you have, for example, the dress code at a beach, right? And at a beach, people are practically not wearing any clothes. And when you go there, now the mindset was so changed that if you are dressed at a beach, you're made to feel weird. What are you doing? Why aren't you naked? Why aren't you practically naked? Why aren't you in your undergarments? Because this is the place that's normal here. In other words, perceptions of people, these same clothes, if you were 1 mile that way, you'd be humiliated. If you were in an office, you wouldn't imagine yourself that way. If you were at an airport, you'd be disgraced. But you tell yourself, this is normal here. It's human eyes looking at you. You're in the public sphere. Nothing's actually changed other than sand and water, right? But the imagined self is so powerful that it can make you leave your values. Something that even from a non-Muslim point of view, you were uncomfortable with it anywhere else. You became comfortable with it because the perception. The perception is really important. And that mukhtal can actually drive so much of a person's life, and people realize it's a really powerful thing to want to impress others, right? There's a reason that when teenagers become more self-aware, they spend a lot of time in the mirror. They spend a lot of time in front of the mirror, boys and girls. When kids are younger, they're like, and they're not brushing their teeth, their hair's going all over the place, and they don't care. They can wear the same shirt, and their mom, is that the same shirt from last week? I need to take you to a haircut. Oh, a haircut? I don't want to go. Right? But then as they get older and become more self-aware, now they're like, how are people seeing me? Are people going to comment on my clothes, or on my shoes, or on my backpack, or on my socks? And now everything is about my impression, my appearance is being taken into consideration. The word mukhtal actually suggests that this is someone who lives only for to maintain a perception and an image. They're no longer authentic. If they can't even be true to themselves, how can they be true to anybody else? How can they even appreciate truth itself? The thing about truth, by the way, is that it's always uncomfortable. Truth always makes somebody uncomfortable. Truth is always a difficult pill to swallow. So by definition, truth is not good for your public image. Truth is not good for how people might perceive you. Go with the flow, now that's way easier. You understand? Prophets, ﷺ, were the most humiliated people in the world by their own nations because they wouldn't let go of the truth. And some of the people that enjoy the most prestige and people that enjoy the most high class in society, you'll notice something. Lying and making sure perception and PR is their top priority are people that they see that is the key to their success. They associate that with their success. So what is it then? You know what it is? Why I'm taking the time to explain this to you for what basic reason? The basic reason is when you have that mukhayyal, that imagined version of yourself that wants to impress others, your goal becomes to acquire the love of people. Your goal has become to acquire the love of people. With that in mind, listen to what Allah says. Wallahu la yuhibbu kulla mukhtalin. Allah, in fact, He doesn't love anybody who's mukhtal. He's not going to give His love to someone who is obsessed with giving their love, obsessed with running after the love of everyone else. So there's a remarkable statement here by Allah Azza wa Jal. We're not even getting to fakhur yet, because Allah is drawing a contrast, subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's also important to note that this is a jumla ismiya. I won't get too grammatical with you, but the point is al-ithbatu ala ghayr al-fa'il, which in simple English means it isn't Allah who loves people like that, but others do. There are others who will feed your fake self. There are others who will put thumbs up on your filtered pictures. And there are others who are going to comment and boast and further that fake version and encourage that fake version to keep going. To feed it even more and more. And it becomes a self-fulfilling, propelling thing. And now that love, and you have people that just, especially now in the world of social media, it's all about perception, isn't it? It's all about image. Right? And what happens? And these people that are so obsessed with their image and coming across a certain way, then somebody secretly video records them in a conversation somewhere where their real self, which they've been starving, the real self of you has kindness in it, has mercy in it, has fairness in it, has courtesy, has these good qualities in it, right? But when you keep starving it, those qualities start disappearing. So your real self becomes ugly the more your fake self is beautified. So somebody secretly records the real ugly self, and then they're getting slammed online and exposed for who they really are and all this stuff because there was no feeding being done to the inner self, right? That wasn't being done. But people like that, they'll gain massive followings and say, I love all you guys, I love all my fans. You don't. You don't love any of them. If any of them were in pain, you'd feel pain? What's the definition of love? Love means you want good for someone else. What's the definition of the love of a mother for a child? She wants to protect the child. She wants to make sure the child is being taken care of. She wants well-being for the child. She wants good for their future. That's love, isn't it? Love isn't, I love you, now praise me. I love you for praising me. I love you for complimenting me. That's my love for you. Thank you so much. No, that's not. None of this is real. All of this is fake. Fake on top of fake on top of fake. And this father tells his son, when you go out there, a lot of people will live that fake life. And they feed each other that fake life. When you're going to go out there, you're going to meet a lot of those people. And that's why, Wallahu la yuhibbu kulla mukhtalin. Kulla is actually for jamia, right? For a large group, all or every. So he's saying you're going to run into a lot of people like that in life. And you might become one of those too. You and I, all of us have an element of that in us, but it's got to stay under control until it doesn't become us. It doesn't take over us. Then the next quality that Allah mentions, it's almost as if, you know how a disease evolves and mutates, and you can have somebody who has like a disease at stage 1, and it can go to stage 2 and stage 3, like that. It gets worse and worse and worse. So from mukhtal, which is an ism fa'il, now we get to the word fakhur, which is actually sighatul mubalagha, which is actually a hyperbolized noun, like an extreme noun. So when you see words that sound like fakhur in Arabic, like shakur is extremely grateful, right? Or ghafur is extremely forgiving. Allah's name, extremely forgiving. Okay? So here, or wadud is extremely loving, one of Allah's names, al-wadud, like extremely loving. So here you've got fakhur, which is extremely, now how do we translate that? You can say extremely prideful. Well, one way you can think about that is extremely prideful. So let's dig into this word just a little bit. Really fascinating word. They say nakhlatun fakhur azimatul jidh' ghalidatul sa'f. When you have a palm tree that's very thick, like you look at just the bark of it, you didn't even look up, right? Because the real stuff in a palm tree is at the top, right? When you look at the base of the palm tree and the stem of the palm tree, the bark of that tree, it's really thick. You're like, wow, this is nice. And actually, when you can't really tell the quality of the tree until you make the effort to climb all the way to the top. And when you get to the top, the meaning of it is غَلِيظَةُ السَّعَفْ, meaning the leaves are hard, dried up, meaning it has no life, it can't give any fruit. It looks so big and impressive, it gave the impression that it's so incredible, but it's actually dead. It can't give me any fruit. That's the word fakhur for a palm tree. The al-ma'na al-mihwari, or there's actually others. Al-fakhuru min al-ibil. They say the fakhur is used for camels too. Al-azimatu al-dar' al-qalilatu al-laban. When camels gave birth, then they look like they're going to give a lot of milk. Their body inflates, right? And their udders inflate. So they look like the babies can drink a lot of milk from it. But the kind of camel that would have large udders and its babies would come to drink milk from it, but no milk is coming out of it, they would call that fakhur. Meaning it looks so impressive that it's going to give so much milk, but nothing's coming out. And even the camel owner was hoping that they can store some milk and, replenish themselves, feed their families, all this stuff, but nothing's coming out of it. So it was a false advertising kind of thing. So you see the commonality between the tree and the camel so far in the word fakhur. Similarly, they use this word for al-busr alladhi la nawan lahu. When they have a big date, normally dates are smaller size, but some are really, big. And when you have a bigger date, you're like, man, if I get the seed from this date and I can plant it and grow that tree, I'm going to get a lot more big dates, right? So when they open up that date and there's no seed inside. So it looked like it's going to have, but it doesn't have inside. So the common, and from it came the word fakhar, which is pottery, which is soil, which is so rich, but when it becomes dry, then it becomes pottery, right? And it looks so hard and it looks so solid, but pottery is one of the weakest solids in existence. A little small drop, and what's going to happen to it? It's going to smash into pieces, right? So it actually becomes, and so much thick, heavy soil goes into it, but by the time it's dried up and turned into pottery, it becomes very light and brittle. So in all of the idea of fakhur, first and foremost, is a person who looks very impressive, who gives the impression of being very impressive, and shows off how impressive they are. Fakhr actually became one of the words for pride, right? And this is different from arrogance. Maybe in the next khutbah, when we get to that next, I'll share that difference with you too. But for now, at least, what I'd like you to get through is Allah doesn't love this quality. Now, what is this quality? This quality is someone who knows they have nothing on the inside. Their real self has nothing actually to offer. But they really want people to be impressed with them, right? So first, they let others dictate their perception of themselves, and now they want to present this disguise. They're literally wearing a disguise now because of that imagined self, and they're inflating it constantly. And this kind of a person is fakhur. This is why the people that are the most obscene and the people that are the most condescending, they talk down to others, etc., are usually the people that are the most insecure themselves. Like deep down inside, they're really scared that somebody might discover their real self. And it's just in the words themselves, Allah has exposed what fakhur is. Because when you come to a new society, like when you guys go to school, and you see those kids that are like dressed cooler, and they're talking, and they're more popular, and everybody looks like, man, I wish I could be in that, I could still on that table. I wish I could be with them. They're the cool ones. You know what Allah is basically exposing? That each one of them is trying really hard to hide what they really are. Each one of them is showing you a disguise. And you're just impressed with what you see on the outside, but when the real when the situation arises, that the union that they have disappears. Those are not real relationships because those people aren't even real with themselves. They can't be real with you. So when time comes and you're in trouble, they disappear. The most genuine friends you will have are people that don't have these qualities. And he's actually saying, by the way, when we, as a believer, we love what Allah loves, we hate what Allah hates. When Allah says Allah doesn't love these kinds of people, He's not just telling us, don't become this kind of person. He's also telling us, he didn't say Allah hates those people. He says Allah doesn't love those people. There's a difference. Allah is not, and so Allah didn't say He hates. He says He doesn't love, which means I need to stop being in love with that kind of an environment. I need to get myself out of this fake scene. I need to put myself in an environment that Allah loves, around people that Allah would love me to be around. I need to assess, am I just going to party after party after? Some people like live the gatherings, like the weddings parties life. Other people live the club scene or whatever. Other people live the college party scene, or just the hangout, right? In any one of those, there can be genuine gatherings, and then there are just everybody's just dressed to pretend how happy they are, right? The family fighting each other to death on the way to the wedding, dressed the most beautiful they've ever dressed. Everybody's yelling at everybody, and then when they get there, and they take this happy picture, like beautiful memories. And when they think about that wedding, all they're thinking about is that was one of the worst nights of my life. Remember what you said to me in the car? Remember what you did? Yeah, you look really nice though. So, look one way on the outside and something else on the inside. And Allah says He doesn't love that about an individual. So this is not for me to comment on everybody and what they're like. First of all, it is, do I have that inside myself? Do I have that inside myself? And if I sense that that's the priority, that's become the priority. If all the conversation is about what kind of clothes, where did you get that made? What are you wearing? Hey, I saw you got a new car. Oh, you moved to that neighborhood? Shallow things, material things, things that in the end won't matter. As opposed to you sitting and having a meaningful, rich conversation about something that actually matters. Something that actually helps someone. That actually helps someone broaden their understanding about something. We all know the difference between real conversation, meaningful conversation, and meaningless conversation. That's powerful advice from Allah. Wallahu la yuhibbu kulla mukhtalin fakhur. Finally, I'll share with you, by using the word la yuhibbu, Allah has given us kind of an ishara in this ayah that these are things that are easy to fall in love with. There's an attractiveness to them. There's a magnetic field in that environment. Once you get sucked in, it's hard to pull yourself out, right? And so Allah is actually saying, implying here, when you start, the only way to pull yourself out is you develop in yourself a need to make yourself feel loved by Allah. Like you have to feel the need, Allah, I don't want to be any kind of person that you don't love. And then how do you get Allah to love you? It's pretty easy. Allah didn't say, climb this mountain and I will love you. And do this, and I will love you. Allah, in these ayat, the formula is so simple. Just don't do this, I already love you. Just don't lose my love. Right? It's not, you don't have to earn Allah's love. Just don't unearn it. That's the beauty of the phrase. Right? Everybody else, you have to work to earn their love. With Allah, the love of Allah is already there. It's just, don't undo it. Don't disqualify yourself from it. Maintain it. Just stay away from these poisonous things that hurt you. And why would Allah not love someone? You say, what kind of God doesn't love His creation? No, the point is that if you don't have a genuine relationship with yourself, then I'm not even in touch with my own heart. And Allah, the love of Allah is felt inside the heart. The matter at the end of it all, what this boils down to is where we stand in the state of affairs of our own hearts. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us clean hearts, and may Allah Azza wa Jal remove from us the need to be prideful, to show off. I actually didn't get to address the three things that I put in the title of this khutbah. Pride. I talked about pride, but I didn't talk about confidence and humility. So I'll leave that off for inshallah ta'ala next khutbah, because all those three things should be looked at comprehensively. This passage does a remarkable job of tying all of those three things together. So with that, I conclude today's khutbah. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikr al-Hakim. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salatu wa salamu ala ibadihi alladhina istafa خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. عباد الله رحمكم الله، اتقوا الله. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. أقم الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا.